Now, whatever else coronavirus might have in store for us, it seems certain that tough times lie ahead economically, with a new report suggesting that a third of UK employers will be making redundancies ahead of the end of the furlough scheme in October. So, can you and how do you COVID-proof your job prospects? Let's speak this morning to Sophie Aziz, who's a theatre, film and TV studies graduate. Hi there, Sophie.
Hi.
Hi, morning. And hopefully, with some sage advice for you, Sophie, we've got Shan Saba, Director of Brightwork Recruitment. Hi there, Shan.
Hi, Kay. Hi, Sophie. How you doing?
Good.
Hi.
And we've got a Suzanne. We've got all the S's today. Suzanne Doyle-Morris, who's the author of The Con Job, Getting Ahead with Competence in a World Obsessed with Confidence. Hi there, Suzanne.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So, Sophie, tell me what is happening with you. You've just graduated, is that right?
Yeah, I graduated in July, just there, and everything has definitely been very uncertain. Everything's very up in the air right now. Things have been postponed, cancelled, and it seems like the beginning of my future career has just been put on hold for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, what was the plan? Let's forget that this whole coronavirus situation has happened just for a little minute. What would you have been hoping for coming out of college or university at this time?
So I had different work experience positions lined up, and they got cancelled. And I did ask all the contacts to keep in touch with me, but of course they didn't really know what was happening either. So the plan really would have been to have tried to get myself into some sort of grad job, some sort of internship, some sort of other work experience, but everything's just so limited at the moment, and it means that the competition's even higher.
Yeah. Shan, I mean, I guess that is a fairly typical story. And of course, lots of new graduates rely on, particularly in Sophie's line of work, getting in, maybe doing 3 weeks here, a month there, getting a bit of experience under their belt. Has that all just stopped?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, Sophie, you're not alone in this. And graduates have been at the hard school leavers and graduates, because that's where the work line is dried up. Because it's easier to cut those roles out, to save the money. And employers, unfortunately, have had to make those hard decisions, Sophie. It's not going to last forever, is what I would say. And there's really, really positive signs on the other side of all of this. But yeah, you're absolutely in that place, which isn't great. I understand.
So graduates have been hit quite hard, Shan. What other kind of groups? I mean, can we identify other groups that have taken a particular hit?
Yes. So, I mean, graduates, school leavers, and also people over the age of 50, sitting in that work bracket as well. They've been hit by quite hard as well. And you're finding that, I'm going to be quite blunt here, when you're in that age group, that over 50 age group, haven't faced that type of situation before, they're really, really struggling. So these are the two age brackets, I suppose, or two groups of people that have been hit the hardest.
I mean, do you feel that older age group is going to find it more difficult to get another job if they're hit by redundancy?
I mean, that's the sad truth about it. Just the bare truth is, in that age group, if you've been in a job for a significant amount of time, it's much harder for you to get into that mindset of going, right, I'm going to have to plan this, I'm going to have to work towards this. My new job is to get a job, because it's been such a hard hit. When you're younger, when you're of that graduate calibre, I suppose, or if you're a younger age group, you've got a little bit more time to get yourself back up and running. It all is in the mental state, really, at this time.
And I suppose as a younger person, you're kind of used to having to prove yourself. You're in that stage in your life, you're sitting exams all the time. You're always kind of jumping through hoops, aren't you? But if you've been more settled in a job for 20 years or whatever, then you've maybe lost that a little bit.
No, you're absolutely right. And, I think I'll give you a real life example. Last week we were speaking to somebody's actually on the Drive Time show, a chap called Andy Burns, who had been made redundant. He sat in that older age bracket, but actually he managed to get himself a role within a very short space of time after that conversation. So, there is light at the end of the tunnel for both sets here, I would say, both people in those age groups. But you're right, of that younger age group mindset. They've had to prove themselves. They've maybe had to get part-time work throughout university and deal with interviews and difficult customers and all those types of things that will come across in interviews when the time gets much better, when the interviews start coming.
I mean, Suzanne, what kind of advice would you give to people in terms of how to present themselves for new job opportunities if that's the situation they find themselves in? And would it be different for someone who's perhaps at the kind of older end of their working life rather than someone like Sophie who's starting out?
I think there's a variety of things you can do, and you're right, there is a difference between the two. But I think what we all need to focus on is help that new employer think about how you are the right person to help them respond and recover. That's where every business is in right now. So even if things are going really well with them, and let's be very clear, some sectors are actually thriving. So how do they respond to that new opportunity? But let's be honest, most are not. So how do they recover? So if you can help them think creatively about why you're the right person to do that with evidence, because I'm all about the competence, then that really can help them think, okay, actually this person might be for me. And two ways you might do that are to look at your CV and just quantify the heck out of it. And what I mean by that is give them some granularity. So tell them things like, how much money did you save your last employer? How much money have you brought in? How big were some budgets that you were involved? How many people did you work with? How many people did you manage? Give them that sense of who you are, because I've worked with clients for whom they say, managed a team and we worked well, throughout the year. But actually, when you hear that their team was 4 people, they brought in 20,000 pounds worth of sales themselves, it just helps give you a sense of, okay, what does this actually look like on the ground? So quantify everything you possibly can on your CV. And the second thing that I think actually is useful for both, new graduates, but also people who are much further, along in their career, is to use other people's feedback to talk about yourself. And what I mean by that is we will all be asked in interviews, okay, how would you describe yourself? But it's really easy for me as the interviewer to tell you how great I am. But realistically, just use other people's feedback. Say, well, when I look at the feedback I've got from people, historically the words that come up are team player or a good negotiator or great at communicating or whatever it is. Think about what is the consistent theme and some of the feedback you've had, and how can you make that work for you? Because that's so much more believable than me telling you I'm a great communicator, I'm a great team worker, or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. But I'm just thinking, from Sophie's point of view, she's just come out of her studies, so she perhaps doesn't have, that experience to be able to quantify.
Okay, so one thing, yes, the experience to quantify might be trickier, but if Sophie was involved, and I don't know if you were, but with any types of graduate clubs or anything of that nature, look at how you could quantify any of that realistically, or anything that you did that's an extracurricular. Think about, okay, what were my responsibilities? What did that turn over? Because most graduates that I meet, they still have had other things that they've done extracurricularly that they could even just share stories with.
Are you doing the CV at the moment, Sophie?
Yeah, I've been handing out my CV and to everything and applying for everything and anything that's even remotely close to my degree. But that's really good advice. I know that not a lot of it fits to my situation, but some things that you've mentioned there I've not thought about before, so I'll definitely be looking at my CV and my application.
Shan,
I'll give you a really relevant example, which is we hired somebody and we've kept her on for much longer than we ever anticipated. She was an intern, not out of uni yet, and what really sold me on her CV was she was able to talk about, we do YouTube videos, and she was able to talk about the YouTube videos she'd had and also their reach, their viewership numbers, things of that. And she thought, that's just my hobby. But once she could see it as valuable to someone like me, I totally hired her. I was like, yep, I want you, and I've kept her on throughout all of this, actually. I mean, she was due to stop months and months and months ago, but I've kept her on because she consistently shows me how competent, how skilled she is, how valuable. But it started with the way she presented herself at the beginning. And interestingly, she didn't present herself strongly. She didn't come across as a big personality because I'm sure, we all on this call have probably been dismayed by how we've been disappointed by people who came across because a big personality, in my experience, can often can disguise a lack of talent. She was quite quietly competent about it, and it was just when I started digging, I said, so tell me about these numbers that you were able to generate. She was really quite understated about it. But I was like, these are great numbers. You're hired. I mean, that's a very short version of it. But again, it wasn't anything she'd even thought about because it wasn't part of her original coursework, the thing that she would be valued for. It wasn't at all. It was something she'd done in her free time.
Shan, would you agree that often people don't actually realise that the talents that they do have to offer?
Absolutely, and people don't think deeply about it, and I think, Sophie, it's easy to sometimes overlook some of those skills that you have that you maybe don't put out there. I would say that as well, consider what your core skills are. So don't just search for job titles. Look at what your core skills are, and then you can list them and have them, exactly as your other caller said about quantifying them, but list them on your CV and your online profile, because sometimes hiring managers are looking for these skills rather than job titles. So don't just search for a job title, search for those skills. Think about what you've got and think a little bit more deeply about what makes you and get it out there. And I think importantly as well, guys, is that set some time aside to search for a job and apply, but don't get caught in a trap of just waking up and applying all day, because it's going to drag you down. And it's really important to keep your mind healthy and keep really focused. Fill your time with other things.
One thing that I imagine will be an issue for Sophie as a recent graduate, and for all recent graduates, they study a particular course because that's their passion and that's what they want to do, and they envisage that they're going to have a career in that field, for the foreseeable future. Is this the time, Shan, not to abandon those hopes, certainly not, but to shelve them and look at absolutely anything? An do you continue to focus on what is your dream?
Spread your bets is what I would say. So yes, keep your dream and keep an eye on what those roles are and when they come up. Start building your network, however that may, friends, family, online, keeping close to people in your chosen specialised field, but open up your search. Look at those sectors that are recruiting, and we've kind of touched on that. Online. Tesco are creating 16,000 new jobs because their customer base has moved from stores to online. We're finding delivery, logistics, these areas where they're looking for temporary workers, significant uplifts in these businesses because we've all changed how we buy. So retail's gone from shops to online. As we know, there's sectors that still need workers, agriculture, food production, all looking for temporary workers. And also, as charities start to come back online, could you volunteer? So that something that's close to your heart, it creates conversations when you get to an interview.
And going into another field, albeit perhaps temporarily, let's say in Sophie's situation, where we're planning out your career for you, Sophie, that wouldn't work against her, if you like, because ultimately she wants to work in the media business or the theatre business. It's not going to work against her if she's taken a little bit of a jump out.
Absolutely not. This is all about filling those gaps and creating those conversations when you do get the interview. And also, as I mentioned, just keep your mind focused. So by doing something else, you're not just getting up and applying for jobs all day, every day. You're actually doing something else.
And if I build on that for Sophie, what I would say is go into those sectors that maybe were not your top of your list, but also think about, okay, once I've got that job, how can I try to get more experiences that would have ultimately be useful for a media type job? So, for example, I do a lot of work with people who are very active in their internal networks in big corporates. So not their day job. It's not their day job. But what's interesting is they give their time to these other groups internally, and they get a huge amount of enjoyment and different types of experience. And what often comes out of that is new roles that they would have never saw coming if they hadn't built in that extracurricular thing that really fed their passion, but wasn't part officially of their role. So it can really be a springboard from which you do get more opportunities. And also it just gives you more, every opportunity that you have and you take on for these extracurricular things, it gives you a new story to tell. Mm-hmm. And actually, employers want to they want to hire somebody who has an interesting story. And the number of times I've worked with people who say, you know what, we were going in for X, Y, and Z, but what sold me on them was the story they told me about A, B, and C. And the fact that I was able to say, oh, I've done A, B, and C, but that was my hobby or whatever. So it's a more interesting conversation because we all want to work with people who are interesting, don't we?
Absolutely. Well, Sophie, I hope you're feeling fired up. Lots of...
I'm taking all of this in.
Lots of great advice there. Just as we're talking about work, and I was chatting about this earlier on, the toughest job you have ever done, Shan.
Oh my word, I worked for the largest toy retailer a number of years ago in Edinburgh, 16-hour shifts, 6 days a week. One of the managers, he was horrible to me. He used to drag me to the front, chasing shoplifters, back out, unloading trucks. He was awful. I'll never forget him as long as I live.
Oh, right, okay. You were
out
of there.
As the manager.
See ya. What about you, Suzanne?
Oh, I would say I used to live in Australia, and my first job there was working in Hungry Jack's, which is pretty much the equivalent of a Burger King. But what was great about it was that I was within a month of being there. They said, you know what, you could make management someday. And let's be really clear, I was 16 years old. And I enjoyed the job, but what was interesting is it helped guide me to thinking, no, I don't want that. I want something bigger. I want something different. And that's the other thing. The other benefit of what we're talking around is even if you work out of the sector you think you want to be in, half of us end up in careers because we've done something, we thought, no more of that. I'm done with that sector, or they get a sense of what will suit them. And so for me, I knew that management at Hungry Jack's was not going to be my end-all be-all. And that was useful.
Yes, that's right. You work out where you don't want to be, and then you can find out where
and
you do want to be.
I don't wear a hairnet for work anymore, which is awesome.
Inspirational.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Dr. Suzanne Doyle-Morris, author of The Con Job, Getting Ahead with Competence in a World Obsessed with Confidence. Shan, lovely to speak to Shan Saba, Director of Brightwork Recruitment. And good luck to you, Sophie. Sophie Aziz, who's just graduated in theatre, film and TV studies.